There obviously is an ongoing campaign by some radicals to basically indoctrinate your kids in their version of sexual values. The biggest problem is that this sort of radical position is becoming quite mainstream across the land. You're seeing public school educators who have decided that if you teach your kids traditional biblical values with regard to sexuality, for example, that this is a form of indoctrination and that you are a bad parent. That if you don't teach your kids about gender fluidity, that if you don't teach your kids about the exact moral equivalence between different forms of sexual activity, then this means that you are somehow depriving your children. And this has driven the radicals to new depths. Today's story, courtesy of Daily Wire. Parents at New York City's elite private Dalton School have come out in force against videos dealing with the topic of masturbation that were shown to their first grade children. Parents who sent their kids to the $55,000 a year school have bombarded the school with complaints about Dalton Director of Health and Wellness Justine Eng Fonte's curriculum, the New York Post reported. Fonte showed 6-year-olds a cartoon during her sex ed class that featured small children discussing touching themselves because, quote, it feels good. Here's what that cartoon sounded like.
How come my penis gets big sometimes and points up in the air?
That's called an erection.
Sometimes I touch my penis because it feels good.
Sometimes when I'm in my bath or when Mom puts me to bed, I like to touch my vulva too.
You have a clitoris there, Kayla, that probably feels good to touch the same way Keith's penis feels good when he touches it. But have you ever noticed that older kids and grown-ups don't touch their private parts in public?
They don't?
That's right, Keith. It's okay to touch yourself and see how different body parts feel, but it's best to only do it in private.
I mean, first of all, I just have a question. That seems kind of judgmental to me. I mean, so long as they're teaching kids about masturbation in first grade, I don't see why it should only be in private. I mean, shouldn't we learn from the innocence of the children? And truly, if you're on the radical left and you believe that this sort of stuff should be taught to the children, why? I mean, really, isn't that, why are you teaching them shame? Are you kink shaming these children? The bizarre perversity of teaching this to first graders is beyond me. But let's be real about this. I don't think sex ed should be taught in public school classrooms at all. I think they should be learning biology. Like basic human biology would be good. We have schools that are churning out kids who don't know basic reading or math. But you're going to let these moron teachers somehow teach your children about sexual values. Makes perfect sense. Sounds great. About 120 juniors, girls and boys at Columbia Grammar and Prep School were subjected to Fonte's class called Pornography Literacy, an intersectional focus on mainstream porn, because she taught at an elite Manhattan school for high school students. So that's great, teaching high school students about an intersectional focus on mainstream porn. I mean, you do need to make sure that kids are, when they're focusing on their spank material, you have to make sure that they are really focused on intersectionality, because every act of sexuality is an act of rebellion against the status quo, gang. Fonte's class included material such as semi-nude women in bondage, porn genres including incest themes, barely legal, and kink and BDSM, and the most searched pornography terms of 2019. The head of Dalton School, Jim Best, announced last month he was stepping down to focus on other exciting and inspiring opportunities as the school weathers criticism from parents. But again, this is just an extreme version, unfortunately, of the kind of stuff that is routinely taking place in schools around the country, where kids are being taught that if you have any sort of traditional values with regard to sex, it's because you are judgmental, and it's because you haven't come to grips with your own body and all this kind of crap. Take your kid out of the school right now. Take your kids out of these schools right now. The battle for the culture is heating up. We here at the Daily Wire are making some big moves. So be sure to like, subscribe, ring that bell, because you're not going to want to miss a single moment.